Hello, everybody. So I just want to talk about the Bank of Canada policy announcement that happened this morning. So they decided to hike by 50 basis points, taking their overnight rate to 1%. So we've seen now 75 basis points of hikes over the last two meetings, starting last month at 25 basis points and now at 50, meaning the overnight rate has essentially quadrupled in 6 weeks. Now, they've also decided to begin quantitative tightening April 25th. Now, what does that mean? Essentially, as bonds roll off of their balance sheet or as bonds mature that they own, instead of going back into the market and reinvesting the proceeds to buy new bonds, essentially keeping interest rates low, they let these bonds mature and they reduce their balance sheet or the amount of stimulus they have in the economy. So with the combination of hiking 50 basis points today and announcing quantitative tightening, it's sort of a double-pronged approach to tightening policy. Now, this will certainly have an impact going forward, and the bank has announced that they will continue to raise interest rates. There's no surprises there. Inflation is very hot, right at 5.7% now, and likely will be over 6% at the next print. So they have to really address this. Now, a few of the things that they highlighted in their announcement. Global risks. Obviously, they talked about the Ukraine-Russia war that's going on right now. That's having an inflationary impact as well, which is not what they want, given that they're already fighting high inflation. So obviously, commodity prices, oil, nat gas, food prices, wheat, etc., is making the situation worse, which is why they sort of also have to act aggressively to try to combat this inflation. And then China as well with their COVID lockdowns, that's also another issue because that continues to have impact on the supply chains, which is also another reason why we've been experiencing such high inflation. Now, talking about the domestic situation, they were very upbeat about it, which they should be. Employment, labor market has been very tight. Right now we're seeing a very low employment. Growth has been very strong. Obviously our GDP prints continue to be very strong as well. And wage inflation now has returned to their pre-pandemic levels. So people's wages are going up. Everything sort of is getting better on the domestic front for sure. Now, on the housing market, they did touch on it just briefly with a one-liner, sort of saying that they expect it to moderate. Of course it will, as interest rates continue to go up aggressively. The demand side of the equation will somewhat be impacted as a certain amount of buyers will now reassess their affordability and the need to transact. So obviously this will have an impact on the housing market, no doubt. And one other big, potentially big important fact is they talked about the neutral rate and they raised that range 25 basis points. So previously the range was about 1.75% to 2.75%, and now they've readjusted that range to 2 to 3%. Now, what does the neutral rate refer to? This is essentially the interest rate that will sustain full employment and keep inflation stable. So it's the interest rate that the bank wants to get to, where they feel as though it's sort of is reflective of the economic environment and matches it. So 2 to 3%. Right now we're sitting at 1%. So what does that mean? We have to get about a 1% of rate hikes relatively quickly to get to the lower bound of their expected range. So Bank of Montreal put out a report today after the announcement, expecting a 50 basis point hike at the next meeting, which will be June the 1st, and then another 50 basis points in July, thus getting them to their 2% lower bound as quickly as possible. Now, that is an aggressive route because that will be 3 straight 50 basis point hikes. And of course, it's always data dependent. So it really depends on how the data reads over the next little while. Now, there is no meeting in May, which obviously made a lot of sense for them to go 50 basis points now, because now you have a little bit of time to analyze the 75 basis points in hikes that's happened and what the impact is on inflation and the rest of the economic variables. So that's sort of my thoughts on this. And if you have any questions, let me know, and happy to always discuss with anyone and reply to messages. Thank you.